The moment I stepped through that mahogany door, I knew I had made either the best decision of my life or the worst mistake imaginable. Patricia Whitmore's face twisted into something between a smile and a grimace, as though she'd just bitten into a lemon while posing for a photograph. Her eyes scanned me slowly, deliberately, tracing the lines of my simple navy dress, the modest flats, the tiny drugstore earrings. I could see her mind calculating my worth, and deciding, very clearly, that I had none. She leaned toward her son, my fiancé, Marcus, and whispered something meant to escape me, but my ears caught it anyway, the words sharp and cutting. "You look like the help who wandered in through the wrong entrance." I didn't flinch, not outwardly, but inside, oh, I felt a rush of something deliciously controlled, a thrill of power I had been waiting 14 months to feel. This dinner was going to be very, very interesting. My name is Ella Graham. I'm 32, and I've been keeping a secret. Not just a small one, not a harmless one, but a secret so ludicrous, so carefully hidden, that Marcus, the man I loved, the man I was about to marry, believed I was ordinary. The truth? I make $37,000 a month before taxes. Even after taxes, it's a number that makes accountants blink, double-check, and whisper to themselves. I'm a senior software architect at one of the largest tech companies in the Pacific Northwest. Patents under my name, international speaking engagements, stock options worth more than some families' homes. And Marcus, he thought I was a barely surviving administrative assistant. Technically, I didn't lie. When he asked what I did, I said I worked in tech. He asked if I handled scheduling. I smiled vaguely. He filled in the blanks, and I let him. Why? Because I had learned from the most important person in my life, my grandmother. She raised me after my parents died when I was 7. She lived modestly but wisely, never judging anyone by wealth or status, measuring a person instead by how they treated others. When she passed, leaving me her fortune, she left me something far more valuable than money, a lesson, a single sharp truth. A person's true character shows when they think no one important is watching. So, when Marcus invited me to his family's estate, hinting that this might be the night things got serious, I made a decision. I would test them. I would show up as the humble, unassuming woman they expected, and I would watch. Watch how they treated someone they thought beneath them, someone they assumed had nothing to offer. Before you judge me, ask yourself this. Have you ever wondered what your partner's family really thinks of you? The smiles, the compliments, are they sincere or are they masks carefully worn for appearances? I needed to know. The Whitmore's estate was even more extreme than I had imagined. Raw iron gates with glimmering gold accents, a driveway so long I worried the car might run out of gas before reaching the house. Manicured lawns stretched in every direction, as though an army of gardeners had measured every blade of grass, every rosebush, every tree. I drove my 12-year-old Subaru up that pristine path, the tires crunching on gravel, and caught my reflection in the side mirror. Simple makeup, low ponytail, grandmother's studs. Perfect. I didn't belong here, and that was exactly the point. Marcus met me at the entrance with a kiss that felt performative. His eyes flicked over my modest dress, my shoes, my jewelry, embarrassment, or maybe disappointment. I filed it away. Inside, the house screamed new money trying desperately to look old, chandeliers that looked too big for the rooms, oil paintings whose subjects probably never existed, furniture so expensive it seemed uncomfortable, and at the center, like a queen surveying her kingdom, Patricia Whitmore. 60-something, perfect hair, designer dress, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She extended a hand, cold and dismissive, whispered to Marcus about me looking like the help. I smiled. I hadn't heard a word. The evening had just begun. Dinner was a carefully choreographed performance, each movement steeped in unspoken social rules. I watched Patricia. I watched Vivian, Marcus's sister, who would arrive late and radiant, dripping diamonds and disdain. I watched Marcus, trying to navigate family dynamics he clearly did not understand. And all the while, I remained myself. Simple, unassuming, a shadow in navy, a whisper of humility that belied the storm beneath. I had learned patience from my grandmother, I had learned observation, and I had learned, above all, the power of secrets. That night, every look, every word, every pause was a test, and I intended to pass it on my own terms.
If I'd known what awaited me that night, I might have worn armor instead of navy, but I've always believed the best armor is information. Knowledge is invisible, yet it shields more effectively than steel or silk. And tonight, I would be both observer and blade. I already knew the Whitmore's history. Character dealerships sprawling across 3 states, a mother who climbed social ladders like a seasoned mountaineer, a sister, Vivian, who measured her life in diamonds and cold smiles, and a father who expected Marcus to inherit the empire without question. I had done my research, meticulously, for months. Company filings, social media glimpses, casual mentions in local magazines. Every scrap of information a clue, a tool. But research only goes so far. It doesn't teach you how someone reacts when you appear weaker than they expect, or stronger than they imagine. Vivian arrived 20 minutes late, a predictable queen entering her stage. She was dressed like $1 million, with diamonds that caught the light with every tilt of her head. She glanced around, eyes calculating, and finally her gaze landed on me. One word escaped her, slow, deliberate, with a curl of her lip that screamed both disdain and curiosity. Hello. Nothing warm, nothing welcoming, just hello. And yet that single word cut sharper than a dozen polite insults. Marcus hovered nearby, his discomfort visible. He tried to smooth things over, but his lips betrayed him, tight, pressed together, a shadow of the tension I knew well. I filed it away. Observation is a quiet weapon, and tonight I wielded it like a scalpel. Harold, Marcus's father, finally arrived. Big man, broad-shouldered, eyes sharp but weary. He shook my hand firmly, the kind of handshake that measures resolve, tests confidence, and leaves no room for pretense. Then, unexpectedly, a stranger appeared. Richard Hartley, silver hair, sharp gaze, a man who seemed to look right through me, as if recognition danced on the edge of his memory, teasing him. Dinner began, place settings that required memorization, 6 forks for a meal I wasn't sure I could identify. The first course arrived, a soup so exotic it felt more like a puzzle than a meal. Patricia launched her interrogation, polite on the surface, venom hiding underneath every syllable. "Where did you grow up?" "Oregon," I replied simply. "Your family?" "Raised by my grandmother." "And your parents?" "Passed when I was young." Polite sympathy, thinly veiled judgment. I smiled softly, letting the silence fill the gaps, letting them talk themselves into exposure. Vivian twisted the knife. "Your grandmother? What did she do?" "A businesswoman," I said, carefully small enough to sound ordinary, but true enough to hint at depth. The truth, millions, patents, decades of shrewd deals, wouldn't serve me tonight. Not yet. Then came the familiar name, Alexandra, Marcus's ex, perfect in every imaginable way, polished and wealthy, every inch the trophy his family adored. A shadow fell across the room as they remembered her. I smiled, polite, calm, not threatened. Vivian gloated subtly, Patricia's satisfaction palpable, but I remained serene. I said casually, "Alexandra sounds remarkable." The effect was immediate, a flicker of confusion, a pause where arrogance expected submission. Marcus shifted, uncomfortable, caught between my quiet assertion and his family's pride. Patricia patted him, protective, murmuring something about her hopes for him. The conclusion hung in the air. I was not the best. Yet I thrived in these moments, observing, listening, calculating. Their assumptions were my canvas. The evening grew stranger as dessert approached. The room had settled into a tense rhythm, forks scraping porcelain, soft clinking of crystal, and murmured conversations that carried more meaning than their words.
I excused myself to the restroom, heels clicking against marble. As I walked down the corridor, voices drifted from the sitting room, carrying words I wasn't meant to hear. Patricia, she's not right for him. Vivian, adequate, but adequate isn't enough. Harold, Marcus seems serious. Patricia, exactly the problem. Alexandra would have been perfect, still could be if we handle this carefully. My pulse raced. Every word confirmed my suspicions. Deliberate cruelty, calculated judgment. Yet I stayed in the shadows. The thrill of knowing, of holding secrets they could not measure, was intoxicating. I returned, composed. Marcus asked if I was okay. I smiled. Just needed some air. A simple lie, but one wrapped in truth. I had never felt more alive. Weeks later, events took an unexpected twist. Richard Hartley, the enigmatic guest, called. Surprise, yes. Recognition. And laughter. Soft, conspiratorial, like a secret shared with the universe. They have no idea who they're dealing with, he said. Richard became an unexpected ally, a window into the inner workings of the Whitmore empire. Weeks passed in a blur of lawyers, accountants, and meticulous study. I learned secrets, creative accounting, fragile reputations, hidden partnerships, risky ventures masked by polished facades. Then came an invitation I knew I could not refuse. Patricia wanted a small family gathering. This was no longer a test. It was a prelude, a chance to walk through their doors armed with truth and subtle strategy. When I arrived, everything had shifted. I felt light, calm, prepared. The air inside seemed warmer, the tension less suffocating. Patricia complimented my dress. Vivian asked about my work, genuine curiosity peeking through her polished disdain. Halfway through, Richard arrived. He and I discussed the facts, numbers, documents, risks, subtly in the corner. Patricia's color drained. Vivian stared, her mask cracking. Marcus understood finally, seeing the measure of the woman he thought ordinary. Richard offered help, transparency, respect, silence that carried weight. Patricia finally admitted, almost reluctantly, that she hadn't realized I was so accomplished. I said simply, "People often underestimate me." The truth hung in the air, heavy, sharp, clear. That night, I left, knowing Marcus would ask why I hadn't told him. I smiled softly. I needed to know who your family really was first. Some weeks later, Patricia invited me to lunch. Careful conversation, polite, harmonious. But some things once seen cannot be unseen. Some doors once walked through never lead back. And in the quiet moments afterwards, I realized the twist I had not predicted. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, invisible, and the most dangerous when underestimated. Dessert arrived. The silver clatter of forks against porcelain filled the Whitmore dining room, a rhythm that somehow felt both mundane and foreboding. I traced the edges of my glass, the cool crystal under my fingers grounding me, as though it reminded me who I was, observant, patient, powerful in ways they could not yet measure. I excused myself to the restroom. My heels clicked softly against the marble floor. As I passed the sitting room, I slowed. Voices drifted out, low, measured, revealing more than they intended. Patricia's voice, clipped and sharp, betrayed her unease. She's not right for him. Vivian's sneer, barely hidden, adequate, but adequate isn't enough. Harold's tone, careful. Marcus seems serious. Patricia's final words, almost a whisper, but I caught them. Alexandra would have been perfect, still could be if we handle this carefully. I allowed a tiny smile. They thought I hadn't heard. They thought the shadows protected their secrets. But I had heard everything, and now the game had a new layer. When I returned, composed, Marcus asked if I was okay. I smiled softly. Just needed some air. Another lie wrapped in truth. Every detail of tonight confirmed what I had suspected, every word, glance, and pause a piece of evidence. That night I didn't sleep. Words replayed in my mind like a sinister symphony. Every syllable, every tone, each subtle gesture of judgment became a thread I could follow. Clarity is dangerous, especially to those who think they're untouchable, but it is also intoxicating. I drifted in and out of thoughts about Marcus, his family, and the carefully curated illusion I had dismantled piece by piece. Weeks later, the real twist arrived. Richard Hartley, the unexpected ally, answered my call. His laughter crackled over the line. "They have no idea who they're dealing with," he said. Recognition, surprise, a subtle camaraderie formed between us, unspoken but solid. Together, we unraveled layers of the Whitmore family empire, creative accounting schemes, shaky deals disguised as expansion, fragile reputations that could collapse under the smallest misstep. Every document, every meeting, every whispered anecdote from insiders built a map of power, risk, and leverage. Then came the invitation. Patricia requested a small family gathering. I said yes, but this time I entered with purpose, confidence, calm, a measured smile, not a shadow of doubt. The Whitmore estate greeted me differently. Perhaps they noticed subtle changes in my posture, or perhaps I simply walked with a new kind of authority. Patricia's tone was softer, less condescending. She complimented my dress with a warmth I hadn't heard before. Vivian asked about my work, genuine curiosity lacing her voice. Even Harold's handshake felt different, no longer probing, just respectful. Halfway through, Richard arrived. He and I discussed facts, numbers, documents, risks, in subtle whispers. Patricia's face paled, her control slipping. Vivian stared openly now, a spark of jealousy or perhaps realization. Marcus finally began to understand the depth of the woman he thought ordinary. The first twist came quietly, almost innocuously. A delivery from an outside accountant. Richard had orchestrated it. Financial reports, fragile partnerships, evidence of past mismanagement. Patricia and Vivian's eyes flicked between them and me, realization dawning. I smiled gently. People often underestimate me. Their reactions were priceless. Shock, disbelief, that moment of silent acknowledgement that they had misjudged me. Marcus's expression shifted, admiration quietly replacing embarrassment. Patricia, once untouchable, now measured, restrained, uncertain. Vivian, trying to mask unease with forced conversation, failing. Over the next weeks, subtle shifts began. Lunches with Patricia became more careful, polite, harmonious. Yet every compliment, every smile carried a weight of recognition. She knew she had miscalculated. She knew she had underestimated me. Some things, once seen, cannot be unseen. Richard Hartley remained an enigma, yet a trusted ally. Conversations with him revealed more of the empire's weaknesses, its fragile foundations. Every secret, every oversight, every flaw became part of a growing arsenal. The real twist, the moment the story turned fully on its head, came when Marcus's ex, Alexandra, unexpectedly reappeared at a gala. The Whitmores assumed the evening would hum with old alliances, nostalgia, and polite admiration for her success. Instead, I stood quietly beside Marcus, confident, informed, commanding respect without a word. Patricia's mask faltered, Vivian's carefully constructed poise trembled, and Alexandra, radiant and polished, paused, recognition dawning, almost wary. The subtle power shift was complete. My presence alone, calm and composed, had rewritten expectations. I realized something profound that night. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, invisible, and most dangerous when underestimated. It doesn't need grand gestures, it needs patience, observation, and perfect timing. Weeks later, I received another invitation, a formal family luncheon. Patricia, carefully measured, welcomed me. Conversation was polite, even warm, but beneath the surface, I knew the dynamics had changed. Respect, curiosity, acknowledgement of capability, all subtly redirected towards me. And yet, I remained vigilant. Some doors once walked through never lead back. Some truths once revealed cannot be hidden again. I observed, I calculated, I smiled. Every family member now aware, subtly, quietly, that they had misjudged me. The final twist for listeners, the Whitmores, who believed themselves untouchable, had been exposed to the truth of someone they deemed ordinary. And the ordinary woman? She had never been ordinary at all. As I stepped away that evening, the estate behind me bathed in the fading sunlight, I felt a thrill that went beyond satisfaction. I had tested, observed, and awakened a world that thought it was untouchable. The game was complete. But for those who think they know the world, the last twist lingered quietly like a shadow. Some doors once opened remain ajar forever, and some people, once underestimated, can quietly rewrite everything.